What this is constant lights and studio strobes mixed together. And so these are the pictures you see where the model's face will be flashed and then maybe she had sparkly makeup on and it's kind of streaked to the side, or they've got sparkly jewelry or something like that. So what you do is you need to have at least 2 lights. So I'm going to keep it kind of simple. You need to have 2 lights. One of these lights is going to freeze your subject in place, and that's going to be a strobe. The second light that you have is going to be a constant light source, will not flash. And you're going to use a long exposure, and that long exposure is going to give you a cool blur in the area hit by the constant light. So that's the feel of it. And there are several ways you can do this. I've done ones where I did constant light on the background and then blurred it so that they kind of ghosted over the background, or on a dress or on jewelry or whatever, sometimes with gel, sometimes without. So my point is use this as the base and build on it to try something different. So I will bring you out here as a test and I will get this set up. Thank you.
Is it going back to white background?
No, it's fine. We can definitely do on black.
Okay.
All right, so I need to have one of those backlights up front. And, oh, can I pass this off to you? So she can stand there. Yeah, bending in a dress. I'm just gonna stay away from it. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna create one light for her face and another light as fill from below. And the thought is, I haven't tested it with this dress or with this light setup, but I'm gonna talk out my thought process so you can see my failures and how they turn into wonderful results. The idea will be that the bottom half of her dress kind of blurs and streaks, and then the top half, her face, will be frozen in place. In the end, to get this to work, we will have to turn off the overhead lights again because they're constant, so it'll mess it up. So I'm gonna talk through this step by step. All right.
I'm going to put this on channel 1 so it doesn't.
Yes. So what we're going to do, and John was just saying this, we're going to put this modeling light, or this strobe, so that it will not flash. This is going to be our constant light. So we switch the channel so that it won't fire.
You can also just turn off the slave.
Yep, you can turn off the slave button depending on what you have, or a whole bunch of different things. The next thing, depending on the strobe that you have, or depending on the head that you have, you want to turn the modeling light all the way up. Different ones do that, like check to see if your button you can do free or proportional, if you can turn the modeling light up to 100%, because you want it to be bright enough. Because if you're trying to mix that light with studio strobe, if it's really dim, you're going to have a really hard time ever getting it to show up, even if you do like seconds long exposure. So you're going to want it really bright.
Beauty dish okay?
Yeah, beauty dish will be fine. I'll bring you a little bit closer. Okay, now, this light, I am going to want to restrict the light, because right now that constant light, can you see in my hand? It's going to hit the bottom of her face. And if I want her face to be in focus, then I can't have this constant light showing up there. So the first thing I'm going to do is zoom. So this is going to focus the beam. So it didn't completely get away to fix the problem, but from there to there, you see the difference? Here's out, and then here's zoomed in. So it definitely did help. So I put that on the end here. And then this is another perfect opportunity for cinefoil. Because cinefoil, we're going to create a flag or a gobo, something that will tape on the top and just try to block a little bit of light off. So is any of that still around?
Probably got moved into the other room.
Can I have cinefoil? I think one piece, just one piece in the other room. So we're going to tape that on top to block it off. And then I'm going to check to see what kind of aperture I can get for that. Because when I check my exposure, I'm going to see what kind of blur I can get. It's going to be, I need to see what aperture and then match this aperture. So I'll talk this all out. All right, so we've got that. Let me grab my camera for a second. And for this, I'm going to start. You're fine. Thank you. All right, I'm going to put my camera on like normal studio settings. So I'm going to put it at ISO 200. Okay, and I'm going to put it at 1/200th of a second. Start off with, we're going to work from here. And like, F4 or something like that. We'll give it a test. And let's just see when I take this picture, nothing should strobe, what it looks like, okay? Not too bad. There actually is some light here. Okay, so you are seeing a little bit of light, which is good. I want to see the bottom half of her body lit. And I could back it up if I want it to be a little more even. The ambient light above won't be on, so you won't be able to see her face. But I know I want to be able to wiggle. I want to be able to move my camera because that is what'll do a cool blur. So right now at 1/125th of a second, even if I wiggle, it's not long enough for anything to happen. So it's going to be frozen in place. So I'm going to want to figure out another exposure that gives me a longer shutter speed. So let's try like f8 at 1/120 or at a 25th of a second. Let's see that one. Okay.
Flash went off on that, I think.
Which it did?
I think so.
It was probably too low.
Oh, wait, I was low. Okay.
Yeah.
But see, I'm starting to get like the blur on the bottom, so I'm gonna get some cool effects. I think I want even longer, so I'm gonna pass this to you, just so I don't. No strobe at the moment. So let's go even longer. Let's go to a 1/6 of a second. And maybe f11. So basically what I'm just trying to do is balance out. I want a longer exposure. So when I go a longer exposure, I need to close down my aperture a bit. And then I'll match that aperture. So let's see, I'm gonna zoom and wiggle. Ready? Ooh, that's good. Right? Cool, like I like it. This is going more dramatic. This is with a 1/6 of a second. Go shorter if you want less. And so I did all together. I wiggled, zoomed, and lunged. That's my signature technique. Okay, copyright. No, just kidding. Not at all. Okay, so what it ended up being is that I'm at f11. So if I want her frozen in place and matching that exposure, you would use a light meter to get that to be f11. Do we even have one? If not, I'm all for guessing.
Okay, let's guess it.
I do have one in my bag.
6.7 and see
Okay,
what
we're gonna just test
Let me
it.
get it up.
Perfect. Okay.
Does that feel like that's pointing at you, the center of the disc?
Let's test. Brighter. Let's go to like 8. A little bit more. Good. Let's test this. And then maybe move it in a little bit. That's pretty good. Okay. I like it. I approve. Okay. So and I'm just going to move this out of my frame just a bit as I lunge and stuff, because I can't control the lunging at all times. So, all right. So let's get. I'm going to have you cross that knee over. Actually, the other one, because that has a slit. Okay, and I won't get your lack of shoes. Okay, good. All right, perfect. And I'm going to have you arch your lower back, cross it over even more. I'm going for super curvy. Perfect. Hand soft there, a little lower. Good. This hand to the side of your neck. Good. And chin a little bit more neutral and soft fingers. All right, so let's see. And I might need to go the other way for more sparkles. Okay. I like it. I'm going to have you go the other way because the leg, it doesn't have sparkles. Even though I like the leg, I'm like, wait, I'm going for blur. No, it didn't load yet, don't worry. How's my tether? Did it fall out? Okay, tether fell out. I replugged it in, guys. Thank you. Yeah, totally. Okay, so let's do the same pose. Same thing. Arch your back. Good? Okay. All right, I'm going to super lunge and everything. Here we go. Ready? Oh, yeah. I told you it's a signature style here. Okay. So, beautiful. I'm happy with that already. Okay, so I'm going to break it down one more time because I don't know, I feel like that's a little more complicated. So to rehash that, usually in the studio, because you're using a studio strobe, it freezes the action, and so you shoot around 1/125th or 1/200th of a second because you're trying to cut out ambient light. Here we're actually doing totally opposite. We're using a longer exposure because we're letting this light show through because it's not flashing. So what'll happen is this strobe freezes her in place. This is not a strobe. I turned off the flashing part. It's just the constant light. So when I use a long exposure, if I zoom my camera, if I move, it picks up all the specular highlights on her dress, and it's what gives me all of that energy and all of that motion. And I'm doing my best, and I probably missed a little, doing my best with cinefoil to try to block off highlights on her face, because if it's just completely hitting her face, then her face will be very out of focus. I usually start by setting the constant light first to get the amount of blur, and I'm balancing, trying to see at what shutter speed and what f-stop I like. And then when I get that f-stop, if it's f8, f11, then I know, then I set this to f8 or f11 to match the exposures. So I've used this, randomly, like seriously, I've used this a ton of times. I've used so many different editorials. Anything that I just want to have some cool energy to it, I will shoot this. Like if it's a subject, I did an editorial where the subject was in a bar, but the bar was kind of ugly, but there were a lot of lights around. So I froze her in place and moved just a little bit. So I blurred all the bottles of liquor, like all of that stuff that was a really distraction. And now it was just specular highlights. You could still tell it was a bar, but now it was energy and it felt more like nightlife. So you got to kind of think outside the box. But for this, as far as cost effectiveness, whatever light you have will work. You know, the softbox. The reason I like the beauty dish with a grid is I can focus my light a little bit more. So something that's a little tighter, a smaller light source, an umbrella would be significantly harder to control because it goes everywhere. But if you have a basic reflector with some cinefoil, it's whatever studio strobe you already have. Or if you have chicken lights, you know, the hot lights. Actually, the first portrait shoot I ever did was with those lights intended to incubate chickens or whatever.
Like the ones on the wall here?
Yeah, like the ones on the wall. Like you could totally use one of those and point it at your subject as a constant light. It's not, you don't even need multiple strobes. You could do it with one of the hot lights and a speed light. Maybe the speed light with a grid, or a speed light with the Photix Luna beauty dish, or a rapid box, or whatever. So it's kind of whatever you have. And I think it makes really fun results.
Awesome.
All right, questions, guys? I go okay? Cool. Oh, and you want a zoom lens, because otherwise it's harder to get the cool effect. It's just wiggling. But now you can zoom and wiggle and lunge.